Perfect.
Okay, all set.
Great. So I'd like to thank you so much to the New England Regional Developers community for inviting me back to speak about how you can write a resume that both recruiters and hiring managers will understand and appreciate. I have made these slides available to you through the link in the agenda, so you'll have access to this deck and to the speaker's notes anytime after this if you want to reference them. So if you want to take notes, that's absolutely fine, but if you just want to listen and take it in and maybe write down questions as you have them for the end, you'll still have access to all of the information afterwards, so that'll be fine. And with that, I want to start by asking you, what if? So what if recruiters could understand the value that you would add to their organization within just 7 seconds of looking at your resume? Now, I'm going to walk you through how to make sure that recruiters can do just that. But I know that there's a lot of advice on the internet about resume writing techniques, and sometimes it can be really hard to tell which sources are credible. So I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of my background and my experience so that you can feel confident in the recommendations that I'm making for you. So my name is Robin Guidry, and I've reviewed over 17,000 resumes in the last 8 years. Over half of these have been technical resumes in the IS&T and computer software industries at companies ranging in size from 130 people all the way up to 60,000 employees. And outside of my technical recruitment experience, I also ran my own business for 4 years as a career coach and a certified professional resume writer, which is what the CPRW stands for on that slide. And I had the privilege while doing that of writing resumes for C-level technology executives, for doctors and researchers, and for published STEM authors, along with a lot of software engineering and development resumes. And all of these experiences, plus some of my own, led me to write my book, Rise, a feasible guide for job seekers in COVID times and beyond. So that's available exclusively on Amazon and paperback and on Kindle. It came out last month, which was really exciting. And now that you know about my combined experience, not just in resume writing, but also in the industry and in tech resume writing in the industry, all of that I think makes me really well suited to advise you on this topic. So with that in mind, let's talk about your future. To start, let's talk about the roles and missions of a resume. They're really not what you think. And you notice that right off the bat because land a job did not make it on this list in front of you. Instead, we have that the roles and missions of a resume are to build a hiring manager's confidence that you'll make their organization much more money than it takes to find, recruit, and retain someone else for the role, to be a template for outstanding interviews by enticing interviewers to ask questions that both parties want to discuss, and at the end, to be a lever to negotiate salary, bonuses, benefits, and perks. In other words, your resume is a way to market yourself to employers. Now, I spent 7 years in marketing before I went back to school for human resources and got into talent acquisition. So you'll notice that I carry a marketing-based approach to resume writing throughout this talk. Now, you need to understand your audience before you can effectively write a resume for it. So let's get you thinking like a recruiter by familiarizing ourselves with which aspects of engineering resumes recruiters think are most often neglected by applicants. Thanks to SurveyMonkey and LinkedIn, I was able to ask this question of 100 Boston area tech recruiters last year. And as you can see up there, the top 2 that recruiters feel are missing from technical resumes are a list of the languages, frameworks, and tools used in each role or for each project. We don't always know what projects your skills tied to, and that's really important. And then also a succinct overview of the primary challenges that you faced, the actions that you overtook to overcome those challenges, and the results of your efforts for each of your roles. So when you put all that together, recruiters are really saying, please describe the challenge, project, or really cool thing that you did in layman's terms, and reference which technologies, processes, procedures, or frameworks you used to accomplish that cool thing. And then rinse, wash, and repeat for all of your roles. So now that you're thinking like a recruiter, let's talk about the 80-20 rule when it comes to resume writing and your job search. So when people talk about their job search and they talk about it in terms of personal brand, the 20% is what they're talking about when they refer to personal brand. So regardless of your industry or your seniority, about 80% of what you do is the same as other qualified applicants. The other 20% is what's unique to you. It's your personality, it's your drive, and it's your essence. So the 80% is what recruiters and hiring managers expect, and the 20% is really why they hire you. So when you think about it from that perspective, resume writing is not just a task aimed at helping you take the next step in your career. It's a journey on which you get to discover your value and learn how to market and use the one thing that nobody can ever duplicate, which is you. So being able to communicate your true value will turn recruiters into advocates, hiring managers into fans, and the competition into dust. Remember when I asked you what if recruiters could understand the value that you would add to their organization within 7 seconds of looking at your resume? Well, I picked 7 seconds for a really important reason. And that's because an eye tracking study conducted by a job board called The Ladders revealed that recruiters spend an average of only 7 seconds looking at your resume before they decide whether or not to pass it along to the hiring manager. In my experience, it's a little different in the tech industry. I feel like it's more like recruiters will spend 7 seconds looking at your resume before they decide whether or not to give it a deeper read. But regardless, you need to convey your value in 7 seconds. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So how do you do it? The answer really isn't as complicated as you might think. And it starts by beginning with a clean and simple header and value proposition. So the header of your resume is the part up top where people typically put their name, their email address, their phone number, maybe their physical address as well. And the advice that I'm about to give you is the piece of advice that people struggle with the most because it really conflicts with the traditional idea of what a resume should look like. So traditional resume headers contain all those things that I just mentioned, and that information tells me how to reach you, but it doesn't tell me who you are. And you have 7 seconds for me to understand who you are. So remove your contact information and put it in the footer section. And instead, use the header to concisely explain who you are and what value you can provide to the organization. And by doing that, I'm hooked now. You're pulling me in to read more from the very first thing that I'm seeing about you. So you can take the example of Florence Ramirez on this slide. The job title in the upper right-hand corner that Florence listed is not their current job title. It's the job title of the role that they're applying to. When you put the job title of the role that you're applying to on your resume, the reader will immediately envision you in that role. And then as they read on, it will become apparent that that's the role that you're applying for, not the role that you're currently in, whether it be a lateral move or a step up, right? Then we read through Florence's value proposition, which is right under her header. She says, former product manager turned UX designer, certified Scrum product owner with extensive experience planning, designing, delivering, and managing digital products. I make things people like, and I help teams make things people like. I'm not happy unless I'm problem solving. And then she lists her favorite tools. And as a recruiter, right away, I'm hooked. I know who Florence is and what value she'll add to my company. Now we'll take a look at Rushida Shah, who is a Linux systems administrator applying for a cloud software engineer role. She says, object-oriented software engineer and open source contributor with a holistic understanding of the internet and hosting from the network layer up through the application layer. Extensive experience building well-designed systems that simplify and automate. I'm happiest debugging tough web service production issues and exploring cloud hosting architectures. And then she lists her fluencies. So if you put this list at the beginning of your resume instead of at the end, because recruiters use it like a map key as they read through your resume, which is much easier for us to do if it's at the beginning. And then Rushida also lists her GitHub account, and I cannot stress enough how much value there is to including a link to your GitHub account and that you have activity in your GitHub account so that hiring managers can review your work. The quality of your work and how you interact with others on that work will give hiring managers insights into your value in a way that a resume simply cannot. After your value proposition, you need to tell recruiters about the companies that you've worked for. So oftentimes recruiters are looking for people who have experience working in specific types of organizations, either big public companies or small private ones, maybe nonprofits or SaaS companies. But if you don't tell recruiters about the organizations that you've worked for, it can be really difficult or time consuming for us to look them up and find out about them, especially in the pandemic world where so many businesses have closed and their websites are out of business now. So the good recruiters will do their best to do the research anyway, but not everybody has the time all the time. And also, as much as we would love everybody to be excellent at their job, not everybody is. You will eventually get somebody on their first day. So make it as easy as possible for them. Let's recap the 4 steps to turn the competition into dust by making recruiters understand the value that you'll add to the organization within just 7 seconds of looking at your resume. So first, start by using a clean and simple header and value proposition to convey your personal brand. Include an easy-to-read skills section after the value prop that recruiters can use like a map key as they read your resume. Then, tell us about the companies that you've worked for. And lastly, describe what you did and what problem it solved in layman's terms, referencing the technologies used. And if you put all of that together, you might come up with something like this. So you should be able to see Rushida Shah's resume here. She's already hooked us in with her header and her value proposition. So as a recruiter, we're happy to spend longer than 7 seconds reading more about her background. And it looks like she works for Nameless Company, a leading independent e-commerce payment processor. She knows that right off the bat without having to figure it out. She's worked on a configuration management project using Puppet and a database automation project using Ruby, all of which are requirements for the cloud software engineer role. And since she couldn't possibly list all the technologies she's worked with, if she's only highlighting her 2 most relevant projects, she listed the additional technologies she's used in this role underneath the projects. And now, as a recruiter, I'm really excited to send the resume along to the hiring manager. And in fact, because Rushida's made it so easy for me to understand what she's done, I don't really have any questions for the hiring manager. So I might even skip that step and go straight to scheduling a call with her. So put together 8 examples for you. each targeting a specific level or area of expertise for the value propositions. This is the #1 area that I get the request for examples in because it focuses on that 20%. And that is really the crux of your strategy here when you're approaching resume writing from a marketing perspective, because that's what your unique value proposition is. So you can use these as inspiration for your writing your own value prop. If you hear a phrase in there that rings true to you, you can feel free to quote it directly. You'll notice that they all follow a similar pattern. And then after we go through the examples, I'll actually give you like an adult Mad Libs plug and play template that can help get you started if you need some inspiration. So if you're looking for an associate level role, you might try something like Future Associate Software Engineer at CyberArk, adept at exceeding performance expectations to deliver quality projects on time and on budget, proven ability to maintain focus and cohesion in moments of high pressure. Coding and music bring me joy. So even though you don't have a ton of experience at this level, you still have to figure out a way to confidently talk about ways that you'll add value to the company. And managers of entry-level employees tend to be concerned about how well those new employees can kind of keep it together in the pressure of a corporate environment. So reassuring them that you understand their challenges and that you won't be adding to them will go a long way. And they did that here successfully in this value prop. And then your value prop is also a great opportunity to show your passion for a company from your very first sentence, which they did by calling the company out by name here. Once you have some experience under your belt, your value prop might evolve into something like self-taught Java programmer committed to code quality and application performance. Proven experience managing all stages of the software development lifecycle as a full stack developer. I'm sought after for my documentation abilities. So as you gain more experience, don't shy away from showing it off. This is the value proposition of someone who worked for a couple of years at an early stage startup as an entry-level employee, and then who gained some niche valuable experience as the company and the product moved from R&D to deployment and maintenance over the next year or two. So they got to see the whole life cycle of the product, which is something pretty rare for more junior people. So whenever you have rare experience, make sure that you call it out, because it can kind of get you a little bit of a level up there and be a lever for negotiation when you get to the final stages. And then here's one for a QA role. Software quality assurance analyst experienced in the planning, product development, and testing lifecycle of web and client server applications. I excel at collaboration, creative strategy, and delivering and receiving feedback with grace. Now, this sounds like somebody I want to work with. Your resume shouldn't just be a repository of hard skills. The value prop is a really great opportunity to explain to recruiters and hiring managers what it's like to work with you and how your soft skills will add value to the organization. Whether you love cutting edge technology or you prefer to stick with things like LampStack, there's no wrong answer. Advertise what you like and focus on finding roles that support your areas of interest. Full stack developer with a love of new age JavaScript applications that utilize modern technologies to provide ease of development and end user speed and usability. Passionate about sharing experiences between mobile and web to create a consistent product for users on any platform. And then here's one for a senior site reliability engineer with, and it just will start out just like that. Senior site reliability engineer with experience designing and implementing load balanced web systems using open source technologies, setting up and maintaining continuous integration build systems, and mentoring and reviewing the work of junior developers. So people can add value to an organization in a lot of different ways. And managers and recruiters both love engineers who like to mentor and coach more junior teammates. So this value prop speaks directly to that. And if you've got that under your belt, make sure that you consider it in the things that you want to mention. As you move up a level, you might see something like this, but the beginning of this could really apply to any level. Award-winning software developer whose first love was Java. Believer in creating beautiful software that provides a first-class user experience. People say I'm good at tailoring my message to my audience, be it technical or non-technical. So if you've won a relevant award, there we go, call it out in the value prop. So it'll pull the reader in immediately and will also serve as a fun conversation topic during your interview. And regardless of your level, people who can judge their audience and adjust their message appropriately are highly sought after. So make sure that you mention that strength if you have it. Once you get up to the manager level, you might be looking at something like this. Hands-on software engineering leader with expertise in software quality and release management. Builder and enabler of high-performance distributed testing and release teams in Boston and Hyderabad with an emphasis on resource management, cross-functional team management, and continuous process improvement. So companies going through early to mid-stage growth often need people who have experience working on distributed agile teams. So if this is an area where you can add value and those are the types of companies that you're targeting, think about including it in your value prop. And then at the VP or the CIO level, you might present your value as something like this. Information services and technology pioneer with a proven reputation for transformations, turnarounds, trailblazing, and rapidly steering organizations to increase competitive advantage, a stronger bottom line, and shareholder gains by leveraging innovation to maximize performance and quality. So as you can see, you can add significant value to a company at any level, whether it be entry level all the way up to VP and beyond. Now, when you sit down to write your value proposition, start by asking yourself one question. What makes me an indispensable asset to the company that I'm applying at? Write down your answer before you start crafting your value proposition. And if you don't know the answer, do more research on the company until you can figure out what the answer is. But don't start writing your value proposition until you know what the answer to that question is. And your answer might be one thing, or it might be several things. There's no perfect number. And then once you've written your answer down, you can proceed with drafting your value proposition. And your value prop is the foundation of your personal brand, right? It's what reflects that and communicates that 20%. So it's really important to spend some time on it and to update it from time to time as your skills, knowledge, and abilities evolve. And to give you an idea, every time I update mine, I update it over the course of 3 or 4 days. And I just kind of think about it all the time and make tweaks to it and evolve it. And then I put an end date on it. This is the template, though, that you can fill in to generate your first draft. So like I said, these slides are available to you through the link in the agenda. You can come in here and pull it directly from there, but I'll also give you a moment here to take a screenshot if you like, or you can email me afterward and I can send it to you, whatever your preferred method is. I'll give you a second to take that screenshot if you like. You can see at the beginning, every one of them starts with the function or the desired job title, not the current job title. And then talks about 2 usually relevant functional areas, and then up to 3 relevant skills. And then you saw all of them also ended with one thing that made them happy or one thing that somebody else would like about working with you. And that's going to be the part on your resume that's really going to resonate with recruiters and hiring managers, because not a lot of people highlight that. Now, in another survey that I did with LinkedIn and SurveyMonkey, I asked 100 recruiters their thoughts on the power of an accomplishments-based resume. 86% of them feel like quantifiable accomplishments using the details of an applicant's contribution to a company profitability, problem solving, or productivity should always be included in a resume. So very important, a lot of weight put on this one. And there are a lot of different accomplishments to woo employers with. So when you're trying to figure out what accomplishments to include in your resume, think about whether you did something that made the company money, saved the company money, saved time, made work easier, solved a specific problem, made the company more competitive, built relationships or improved the company image with internal or external customers, vendors, or the public, expanded business, attracted new customers, retained existing customers. And then it's really important to mention that sometimes maintaining the status quo is a success in and of itself, especially if you're going up against a really challenging time, like, I don't know, say a global pandemic. So there are going to be a lot of relevant cases where maintaining the status quo is an achievement in and of itself. So don't forget that. And once you figure out what your accomplishments are, you'll need to quantify them, even the ones that seem intangible. So there are 4 approaches to quantification that pretty much all recruiters understand. The first is straightforward numbers. So instead of saying that you mentored more junior developers, be specific. Say you mentored 3 junior and 4 mid-level developers. The second is comparison, which is a powerful way to communicate. So let's say that you identified an inefficiency in a process and made a recommendation that improved the situation. How much did you increase efficiency by? In some instances, you'll be able to calculate the actual percentage, and in other instances, you'll need to estimate. And good news is that estimating is okay. You just have to call it out by saying something like, boosted team productivity and estimated 65% by getting buy-in to change from manual to automated testing. So as long as you're owning that it's an estimate, it's absolutely fine if it's not exactly to the correct decimal point. You can also quantify things by calling out their ROI, which stands for return on investment, and is how quickly your efforts delivered results. So sometimes you'll talk about ROI in terms of dollars. Another approach is to talk about it in terms of time, which is called opportunity cost. And that's ideal if your objective was to ensure the efficient use of scarce resources. So if that was part of your role, note that down, opportunity cost. And when you're writing down your resume and your value prop, do a little bit more research into that first. And then the last quantification approach is called the CAR approach, which stands for challenges, actions, and results. This approach is really great if you've been at a company for at least a couple of years and you want to give a high-level overview of the impact that you've had during your tenure. So here's an example of what the challenge, actions, results format looks like. This is actually a snippet directly from one of my outdated resumes. So it's not technical because it's for me personally. So the verbiage that's in there won't be of use to you, but the purpose of it is to give you an example and an idea of what value this format has. So it's a high impact and really fun format to read because it follows a story arc structure and is a format that I've used in my resume writing business for everything from associate level all the way through VP and C-level executive job hunters. And so if you want to come back and read that more after the presentation, you absolutely can, but the key points are that you can see your job title is right up top, followed by your company and the dates that you were there. Underneath that, you have the explanation of what your company does. And then you have the big challenge that you faced, right? Potentially 2 challenges, but probably just one big overarching challenge. And then from a very high level. And then you're going to talk about the actions that you took to overcome that challenge. And those are going to start to get more granular. And then after that, you're going to talk about your results. And this is where all of your quantification is going to come in here. And I will tell you that the verbiage in this does not have enough quantification in it because only one thing is quantified. That's why it's an outdated resume of mine. But ideally, you would include quantification on at least 75% of your bullet points here, 50% at a minimum. So a note on length, lots of people ask about length. I will tell you that there is no real hard and fast rule. The thing to keep in mind is that you are never going to write a resume that makes 100% of the people who read it happy. It is simply not possible. Everybody has personal preference. So the general rule of thumb is that you should list your relevant experience, and that relevant experience can only go back 20 years. Pretty much everything after 20 years isn't relevant anymore. And the farther back you go within that 20 years, the less relevant it becomes. So if you follow that logic, it should be no longer than 2 pages. That being said, if you choose to follow the CAR format, I will tell you, you're almost definitely going to be at least 2.5 pages, if not 3 pages. You should not let it go over 3 pages, but it's just because that format includes a lot more white space because of the way the challenges, actions, results, story arc is laid out in the left-hand column. But here's a quote that summarizes my personal take on resume length. A great piece of art is composed not just of what is in the final piece, but equally important, what is not. It is the discipline to discard what does not fit, to cut out what might have already cost days or even years of effort, that distinguishes the truly exceptional artist and marks the ideal piece of work, be it a symphony, a novel, a painting, a company, a resume, or most important of all, a life. So please, please include the things on your resume that are the most relevant and just leave the rest out. If you happen to be a person who has an abundance of relevant things to include, then please exercise self-restraint. Commit to including only 3 to 5 most relevant things, and for your older things, only list the company name and the position if they occurred a long time ago. So if you look at my resume, I list like my last 7 years of experience in detail with the CAR format. And then I have 3 positions behind that where it's just the company name and the dates I was there and my position title with no job description or CAR format under it in order to keep that under 3 pages, because really most things from over 7 years ago aren't really relevant for me anymore. And then before we go to the Q&A portion of this, I can't let you leave without a quick and shameless self-promotion. So if you are interested in buying my book, you can do so by searching my name on Amazon or by visiting my website at robinguidry.com/rise. And then my company is currently hiring. So for those of you with open source experience, we have a special need for that right now. Our primary product is Conjur, which is an enterprise secrets vault and privilege engine for DevOps, clouds, and IDaaS built on our open source core. And our engineers work on a wide variety of projects, from integrations with cutting edge DevOps tools to moonshot projects that seek to revolutionize the world of DevOps security. And then lastly, I love to connect with people and answer any questions that you have. I live on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. Let's connect. And from that, we can wrap it up and go to the Q&A portion.
Thank you, Robin. That was a great presentation. I really loved it. I love the marketing technique aspect of resume writing. I mean, you really, in order to stand out, you really have to, you're branding yourself, you're selling yourself, and that's the best place to do it. I love the combination of you know, explaining your skills and what you've done, what you've accomplished, how you've contributed to an organization, and then things that make you happy or that show a little personality, how you work with others. That's just that was brilliant. It really was a brilliant way of explaining all that. This was very, very, very fascinating presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the positive feedback. I appreciate it. And I did get a question that came in over the chat that I can try to answer too, which is when you're transitioning into another field. So if you have background in a different field and you're trying to transition into tech, what can you do to stand out, especially tech learning, especially if the learning is through boot camp only and not actual work in the tech field? So the first thing that you want to do is ask around to alumni of that boot camp and find out what organizations they have gotten hired at. You can probably even just do a search on LinkedIn to pull up alumni of that boot camp and find out where they're working now, because then you'll know that those companies consider boot camp seriously. And you should know everybody should consider boot camp seriously. If they don't take boot camp seriously, you can send them my way. I'll be happy to have an educational conversation with them. And that's really going to be your starting point, though. You want to figure out what companies are hiring people from your boot camp. You should be able to ask your boot camp that question as well. And then once you have that, you can reach out to people who graduated from your boot camp who are currently working there and ask them what they recommend that you put on your resume for making that transition, because they just had to do it as well. When you go through your job description, though, you're going to be able to see transferable skills because you already have a business background. So you already have a background in a professional setting. It's not like you're coming in as an entry-level person right out of school with no business experience. So your soft skills that you can bring over, whether they be in analysis or in which is a hard skill, or in team building, which is more of a soft skill, you're going to have some overlap there. So those areas of overlap are going to be the real areas that you want to focus on. I think three areas that I typically see are analysis, documentation, and then presentation usually. Presentation is a big one because it's one that not a lot of technical people have as well, or one that not a lot of technical people enjoy, I guess is more accurate. Did that answer? I don't know if the person who sent it to me wants to speak up or not, but if it didn't answer it, please feel free to send me a follow-up message and I will be happy to answer it as well. And you can do that to me either privately outside of the group or here.
Any other questions? We have
I was going to say.
We have some time. I actually have a question. It came up on Twitter, I think, about people who stay stay with the same company for a period of time versus going from company to company every 1 or 2 years. What are your thoughts on that?
So I can tell you hiring managers' thoughts on it. From a hiring manager standpoint, we don't get return on investment on a person's hire unless they stay at a company for 2 years. The 2-year mark in general is when we get ROI. For entry-level people, it's usually 1.5 years, and for executives, it's longer. It's closer to 3 to 4 years. But for most mid to senior level people, we get ROI on your hire if you've been there for 2 years. So we do tend to put people into our ideal candidate category who have tenure at that length or longer. That being said, the average length of tenure right now in the tech industry is, the last time I checked, 1.6 years. So we see people who don't hit that 2-year mark all the time. As long as there's a reasonable explanation for it, and you can articulate that well, you can usually navigate around it. The answer that you don't want to give is that you left for more money somewhere else, because that makes the company nervous that you'll just leave for more money before the 2-year mark again. So answers that you are, a little bit more friendly than that are that you left because there was another technology that was much more exciting that you wanted to learn, and that's actually maybe a reason that you're considering this current company, because you want to go to a company that's not only doing something exciting, but a company where you want to make your home. So if you don't have that kind of tenure, express your interest in achieving that kind of tenure, and then emphasize that you're conducting a really targeted job search to help achieve that result and you're committed to it. Does that help answer that question?
Yes, it did. It was in relation to always learning. So the person that was posing the question was thinking that they look for people who move about because they're always learning, as opposed to staying in one place. I've worked with for companies for many years. I've been in my current company for 10 years, but I'm always learning because the technology keeps changing. So I don't know how you can escape not learning something new.
I agree completely. And I think when you approach it from that standpoint, it's really great too. What you have to remember to articulate with it is that the opportunity to advance your learning didn't exist at your current company or at that company, at your previous company. And so you left to pursue that knowledge elsewhere. And usually you can look at a company's like value proposition online, and usually in there somewhere they'll have a commitment to learning. And so then you can say, that's why I'm so excited to be interviewing here, because I know that you're committed to learning, and so I hope I can stay here and be able to learn here instead of needing to leave to continue my learning. And I think that would be a good way to approach that too.
Great, great.
Did you have other questions?
Anybody else?
Thanks, Heather.
I guess that's it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice meeting all of you. And if you have any questions pop up, just find me on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.